how do you propose to do this? And he said, I know I can do it. They said, yes, but how? And he said, bring me an egg. And they brought an egg, and he said, can you make this egg stand on its end? And all these other engineers tried, and they couldn't make it stand on its end. So he took it and he cracked it slightly and he stood it on its end. And they said, well, if you'd have told us that, we could make the egg stand up. And he said, and if I told you my design, you could build the dome. And so they selected him, but they were a little skeptical. They awarded him joint leadership of the project with his arch rival, Lorenzo Ghiberti. And so they had to share leadership of this. And you imagine there's a lot of conflict. The first 5 years of construction, there was a lot of fighting. They didn't get along. They were both trying to outdo each other to see who was in charge. And one day, Filippo Brunelleschi thought he had a great idea. He was sick, so he didn't come to the project for a few days at a very critical time when they were building metal hoops into the structure of the dome that would prevent the hoop stress, so they didn't have to have the flying buttresses. And so for several days he was homesick, and he let Ghiberti be in charge. And then when he came back, he tore everything apart because it was awful, and he embarrassed his rival. And so they awarded sole leadership of the project to back to Filippo Brunelleschi. Not only was he designing the biggest dome ever built, he had to design the machinery to build it. And so he designed a hoist that could lift tons of brick at the same time. He designed a gearwork so that the oxen could turn the central crank of the hoist, and they could move the gear to the top to lower things and to the bottom to raise things. That had never been done before. He also invented a great crane. The crane is called the Castello, 65 feet long, so that once they got all of these bricks up there, they could move them laterally. So it was amazing the ingenuity that he brought to this. He wasn't just a great designer and a great architect, he was also an engineer. And so finally the dome was completed in 1436. And everything was completed except the very top. You see the top white marble lantern that's on the top. They had to have another contest, and he had a design, and they were skeptical if he could do it. He's just designed all these new innovative machines. He just built the biggest dome in the world, and they still don't trust him. And so 10 years later, they approved his design, and he won the commission, and they started construction of the lantern just a few months before his death. So he spent much of his life devoted to building what is still today the largest masonry dome in the world. If you look at the biggest domes in the world, the Pantheon was the biggest from 128 AD until this was completed in 1436. And this was the largest in the world until the 1880s. So those two buildings we've seen are the two biggest domes in the world for almost 2,000 years. Just one little side note, after he died, they awarded the project for the lantern to a man named Andrea del Verrocchio. And a few years later, he took on a young apprentice and showed him these great designs and this new thinking. His apprentice's name was Leonardo da Vinci. So the torch was passed on. But it's more than just a dome. This was the beginning of the Renaissance. This was the beginning of people thinking about themselves and about all of mankind differently. This had never been done before. And that wasn't enough for Filippo Brunelleschi to say that it couldn't be done. He found what could not be done, and he did it. And it inspired people behind him like Da Vinci, who 60 years later would paint the Mona Lisa right here. And at the same time, within about a year, Michelangelo also carved the David right here. This town, so many individuals have expanded what they are capable of, and they've taught all of us to look at ourselves differently and what we are capable of. It was right here in 1609 that Galileo looked through a telescope and was convinced that the Earth orbited the sun and not vice versa, and even stood up to the church to make that claim. Amerigo Vespucci was born here. Columbus thought he had discovered the West Indies. It was Vespucci who said, no, this is a new world, and so it's named America after him. He's from here in Florence. And right down, if you get a chance to go to Santa Croce, you can see all of the graves of Dante, Galileo, Ghiberti, Machiavelli, Michelangelo, even Eugenio Barsanti, who invented the combustion engine, and Guglielmo Marconi, who invented the radio. So many great people have lived here in this beautiful, beautiful city. And it seems like it's the most appropriate place to recognize the top 50 exceptional individuals out of 60,000 exceptional people. So this is my challenge to you. One of the biggest obstacles you need to overcome on a trip like this is the mental obstacle in your head. As you meet all these other amazing consultants, you think, oh, well, of course she earned it, she's amazing. You want to make yourself the lowest person on the totem pole here. I want you to stop and really think about how exceptional you are. I want you to stop and think about the amazing things and the hard work that you put to come here and to be part of this trip. And I hope that as you're walking around Florence, you think of the other great individuals who walked these same streets. They were standing here where you were standing, and they changed the world. And the only thing preventing you from doing the same is the belief that you can. And I know you can, and I'm glad that you're here to celebrate your accomplishment with us. So congratulations to all of you.